You are now tuned into the People Before Politics radio show, brought to you by the good folks at
Black Westchester, Black Westchester, Black Westchester, Black Westchester. Check the newspaper. Black Westchester, Black Westchester, Black Westchester. Check the newspaper.
Real talk for the community since 2014. Welcome, welcome, welcome. You are tuned into Black Westchester People Before Politics radio show, our special Super Tuesday edition where we interview the candidates in our upcoming elections. Today we have Congressman Tom, I always mispronounce his name and I just had it. I'm going to let him say it and I'm going to mess it up. Welcome to the show, sir.
Hey, AJ, I'm gonna call you Woodsign.
Yes, so say your last name.
Swazi.
I knew I had it right. I just
Swaziland.
Yeah, I practiced it and I was like, but it didn't sound right, so I didn't say it. So anyway,
I'm gonna call you Woodsign from now on. AJ Woodsign.
I've been called worse. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great now that I'm with you. How you doing?
I'm great. So I'm going straight into it. What made you decide to run for New York governor this year?
Well, I've been in public service a long time. I was the mayor of my hometown for 8 years, Glen Cove. I was the county executive in Nassau County for 8 years. I'm serving in Congress now on the Ways and Means Committee. But I'm giving it all up because I'm so sick and tired of everybody fighting with each other. I'm so sick and tired of people not getting things done, focusing more on fighting than on actually helping the people. I'm sick and tired of people leaving New York State. People can't afford to live here. The crime rate is going up. People are just not paying attention to the things that people care about. And I'm tired of my party, the Democratic Party, quite frankly. I'm a lifelong Democrat. I got all good ratings as a Democrat, been working on all the stuff Democrats care about for decades, but they're not listening to the people. The people are concerned about the fact they can't afford to live in New York because the taxes are so high. You're in Westchester County, right? High property taxes. Okay.
Yes.
People can't take it. High utility rates, high rentals, and crime. Crime is going up mainly in the city, and people are scared to take the subway. Guy got shot in the subway the other night going to work on a Sunday morning. Little girl got shot in the Bronx, 11 years old. I mean, it's just every day you hear something else. So I feel like I've got to do something about it. And everything I've done in my life has prepared me for this particular job at this particular time. And either God intends me to do this or he doesn't. So it's just, I'm ready to go.
Now, in your decision, were you concerned with the slim margin that the Democrats have in the House of Representatives not rerunning for your seat and giving up your seat?
No, I mean, a Democrat will probably win my seat. And that's not really, as a matter of fact, well, they screwed it up.
Yes.
When they did these gerrymandering and they took my seat from Long Island and Queens, they took it across the Throgs Neck Bridge and the Long Island Sound up into Westchester and into the Bronx and into Westchester, which didn't make any sense. I mean, I knew that was going to be a problem as far as gerrymandering goes. But that's another example of just like not paying attention to the people. How are you supposed to campaign effectively to serve your constituents if you're trying to go from Westchester and the Bronx down to Queens and Nassau and Suffolk? That doesn't make any sense.
Right. I'm glad you said that. I wrote a series of articles. I know you got the two parties. One party just doesn't believe in climate change and they don't believe in democracy. So yeah, I can't.
We've had it with them too.
I can't go with that side.
I'm sick of all the. I'll never go. I'm a Democrat. I'll always be a Democrat.
Right. But the Democrats, they don't do a good job at messaging, and for some reason they always seem to fumble the ball on the 5-yard line, and the GOP runs the ball back for a touchdown.
Because
And they never fail. And they let the GOP co-opt their message all the time.
AJ, what people care about these days the most in New York State is crime,
right,
and taxes.
Right.
That's what people care about. So I'm talking about crime and taxes, and people say, "What are you talking about crime and taxes for?" That's what the Republicans talk about. I was like, Democrats are concerned about crime and taxes too. We got to talk to the people about what the people care about, not the way the Republicans talk about it, not the Fox News way of talking about it. You know, when you look at crime, 75% of the people in jail have a drug, alcohol, or mental health problem. 50% of the people at Rikers Island have a learning disability. So you got to do the stuff that Mayor Adams is talking about, you know, give judges the discretion to consider dangerousness, fix the bail reform law. You got to do the stuff about getting the mentally ill who are a danger to themselves and others into treatment facilities. You got to stop arresting people and then they get out right away just to do the same crime again. Short term, fix it right now. Got to get the guns off the street. But you got to do the long-term stuff too, which is fix our schools that have been left behind for generations. A kid who can't make it in school has no shot making it in life. Okay, if you can't help solve a kid's problem in 3rd grade or 4th grade or 5th grade, then they become an angry teenager in high school, and then they don't perform in high school. That kid doesn't have a shot. So I live on Long Island, right? I represent Queens and Nassau and Suffolk right now, but I live on Long Island. We have some of the best school districts in America in Long Island. We also have the Hempstead and Roosevelt School District, where these kids have been left behind for decades. And you got the same thing in Westchester. You got some great school districts, and you got other school districts where it's like, you know, 60% of Americans, 66% of New Yorkers do not graduate from college. We got to stop treating non-college graduates like they're second-class citizens. We got to, if a kid doesn't want to do school, well, let's get them an apprenticeship program.
Or a trade school.
A carpenter or an electrician or a plumber or a computer programmer. Let's encourage young people to become nurses. We have a nursing shortage. Let's encourage people to become, you know, whatever. We got all these jobs that are unfilled. Truck drivers. You can make $100,000, $150,000 a year as a truck driver. So the problem is we're leaving too many people behind. And the Democratic message used to be very simple. Work hard. And if you work hard, you make enough money so you can have a decent life. You can buy a house, you can educate your kids, you can have health insurance, and you can retire one day without being scared. That's it. And I don't care if you're a liberal or a conservative, everybody in America should believe that. In return for working hard, you get a decent life. So many people just don't have a shot because they'll work hard. But if you make $15 an hour and you work 40 hours a week and you work 50 weeks a year, that's only 30 grand a year. You mean to tell me you live in Westchester, you're making 30 grand a year? You're going to buy a house? You're going to educate your kids? You're going to buy health insurance? You're going to retire without being scared? I don't think so. So we got to wake up to the basic stuff. We talk about all these high ideas, and I believe in them. It's not that I don't believe in them, but we got to focus on the basics: affordability, taxes, troubled schools, jobs for people that make enough money, basics.
So if elected, what would be some of the first things you would work on?
Crime, taxes, and schools. You know, I tell people I'm a proven executive. Okay, I'm trained as a certified public accountant and an attorney. I was the mayor of my hometown, small little city, for 8 years, Glen Cove. I did my 10,000 hours. I learned how to make government work. I was the county executive in Nassau County, bigger than 11 states in America. Bigger. I used to say to Bill Clinton, my budget was bigger in Nassau County than his budget was when he was the governor of Arkansas. He said, I know. So I know how to run government. I turned Nassau County around. It was the worst run county in America. I turned it around. I ran the 12th largest police department in the country, bigger than Detroit or Boston, with the lowest crime rate in the country for any community over 500,000. So I know how to do government. I'm a proven, now I'm in Congress. I'm a proven executive. That's number one. Number two is I'm a common sense Democrat. I'm not going to pander to the left. I'm not going to back down to the crazy right. I'll work with anybody if you really want to help the people. And number three, I'm very clear about what I'm standing on. Crime, taxes, troubled schools. The governor's been in office for 8 or 9 months now. I don't know what's her priority. You tell me. What's her big priority? The Buffalo Bills? She wants to give $1 billion to the Buffalo Bills to stop them from leaving New York when she won't do anything to stop the people from leaving New York? Or bail reform? She refuses to even talk about it, even though the mayor goes up to Albany, tries to get something done. They say, we need more data. Or Brian Benjamin, handpicked person arrested within 8 months for bribery and corruption. Or the budget. They say it's the most secretive budget in the history of New York State. People have been up there 30 years. Say it's the most secretive process ever. So I don't know what she's running on.
We actually have a listener who said that I'm a bit bothered at how you have attacked Hochul more than Zeldin.
I will go after Zeldin 100%.
And also bothered about your statement about Alvin Bragg, the first Manhattan DA.
Well, Alvin Bragg is a very smart man, very talented guy, but he came out and said he was not going to prosecute armed robbery as a felony. And he said that he was not going to prosecute resisting arrest. And I said, that's not up to you. You're not if you want to change the law, you become a legislator. You change the law as a legislator. As a district attorney, you enforce the law. And I have since talked to Alvin Bragg, and he and I are at peace with each other. He changed his position. He walked that back. He's prosecuting armed robbery. He's prosecuting resisting arrest. And he and I have a very good respect and healthy relationship with each other. I actually talked to Calvin Butts. I've known Calvin Butts for 20 years. And he said he was mad at me, like your caller said, because I went after Alvin Bragg. He said he grew up in my church. I know him. He's a good man. He's a smart man. I said, I'll call him right now, Reverend. I called him up. He and I spoke to each other. We disagreed on an issue. We now are in agreement. And I've got no beef with him, and I don't think he has any beef with me. So, I didn't think it was right when he said that. And I always say what I think. So, but I called him up. I spoke to him, and I think we're in a good place.
Okay. So I just want to say, so I know your area well. I lived in Suffolk County, but I ran through Nassau a lot. I lived in Central Islip from 7 to 14, but I'm familiar with the whole Hempstead, Freeport, Roosevelt.
Corridor.
Even Glen Cole. I'm Hicksville. I'm familiar with that whole. I'm familiar with your whole territory out there. So that is a big territory, and that is a big county police department as well.
Bigger than 11 states.
Yeah, I did see some stuff, and I don't know. Back then, I wasn't paying attention to like who the county executive. When I was living out there, I was young. I wasn't paying attention to who. But I think Nassau County is better than it used to be. I have to say that at least.
Well, when I was
said you helped with Old Westbury. You helped with Old Westbury. I don't know what that means. Calvin Butts. Something I can vouch for my preacher, Calvin Butts, Reverend Butts, and Tom helped him with Old Westbury. I don't know what that means.
He was the president of SUNY Old Westbury.
Okay.
And I worked with him often, and very good relationship. Love that man. Special person. A gift from God. Really respect and admire him. Praying for him right now. When I was Nassau County executive, I appointed an African-American police commissioner who was a chief from New York City. And that was in 2002. And that was not an easy thing to do in 2002, to appoint an African-American police commissioner from the New York City Police Department. But he helped me to improve the Nassau County Police Department. And he promoted a lot of black and brown people. And the commissioner of the New York City Police Department now is Keechant Sewell. She came out of the Nassau County Police Department when I was county executive, and she was promoted by Jim Lawrence, our police commissioner, up through the ranks, where she became the chief of detectives over the years. He didn't make her chief of detectives, but he moved her up through the ranks. And so I appointed 2 African-American deputy county executives for economic development. I appointed African-American deputy county executive for parks and public works. And the reason I tell you this is that, every politician says, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. I've been doing this a long time. And I know what it takes to try and fix some of the systemic injustices that exist in our society. And one of the things you need to do is put people in a position of power who look like the people that you represent and who will make changes because they know what the issues are and they know how to address them. Everybody can make a speech about MWBE, minority and women-owned businesses, and getting government contracts. And you can pass legislation. But if your public works commissioner says, oh, I couldn't find anybody, nobody filled out the right paperwork, nobody had the experience, then it's not going to get done. You have to have people in a position of power who look like the people you represent, like my Latino health commissioner or my Latino mental health commissioner, who will make sure that you do the things you've got to do to fix the problems that we've always had. And I've done that. So I grew up in Glen Cove. Glen Cove's a little unique. Most places on Long Island are all black or all white or all rich or all poor or all this or all that. Glen Cove's kind of mixed together with wealthy people on the water to a public housing authority with all different types of races and religions. And I was the mayor of Glen Cove. But growing up, you'd say that again?
I think R&B singer Ashanti is from Glen Cove.
I went to Ashanti's Sweet 16.
Okay, she is from, yeah.
And she sang at my inauguration before she was famous. She did like CNN midnight, and then on January 1st, she sang at my inauguration.
Okay.
Her grandfather, Jimmy Davis, was a famous civil rights leader, marched with Martin Luther King. He had a radio show I used to go on. He's been dead a long time, but he was a good man and a great friend. But, I didn't really learn much about black and white relations until I was older, and I was working for Arthur Anderson and Company. I was an accountant, and I was assigned to go to Trinidad and Tobago, and I lived there for 3 months, and it was the first time I was a minority, and I learned a lot. But then I volunteered to be assigned on a pro bono job to work in Bedford-Stuyvesant for 3 months, and that was a major education. And then I got a lot of stories if you want to hear about Bedford-Stuyvesant in 1986. But, that's helped me tremendously as mayor, as county executive, as member of Congress, and now running for governor. Just to have a good understanding of what's going on.
You mentioned bail reform. That seems to be a popular topic right now. I think everyone will agree
someone put in the text that I'm on mute. Can you hear me?
I hear you. Yes, I hear you clearly. Yes, everybody can hear you.
Okay.
I was on mute for a second because there's some background noise. I got some people riding bikes down the street or something.
Okay.
So bail reform. I mean, everybody agree. Well, most people agree from my community. There was a need for some sort of bail reform.
Yeah.
There were people that were low level crimes. They couldn't afford bail, and they were spending a lot of time. I think, the same thing with the crime bill we got back during Clinton. We have to be more specific when we call for something, because we called for the crime bill. Now we complain that it led to the mass incarceration of Black people, which it did. We called for bail reform, and I believe that while it was needed, I don't know if it was well thought out, and now the bail reform needs to be reformed because I think,
So when I was county executive, I also ran the jail. Jail was in trouble. There was a federal judge, federal monitor. I fixed it up. I got rid of the federal monitor because they said that we cleaned things up. But I saw people arrested for the same low-level offense, get $100, $200, $300, $500 bail, and one person gets out right away, and the other person languishes in jail because they can't pay $100 or $500. And that's not fair. So I agree that cash bail, especially for low-level offenses, often does not make sense at all. And we can't go back to the way it was. But every other state in the United States of America gives judges the discretion to consider the dangerousness of the defendants before them. 49 other states and the federal government. Now, the concern is, are judges just going to say that black and brown people are dangerous, and they're going to say white people are not dangerous? That's the challenge. There's a professor up at Yale University called Philip Atif Goff. And he said, we have to use statistics, the way we do crime statistics, CompStat, where they use statistics to monitor crime in neighborhoods. We have to use statistics to monitor police behavior. And I say on top of that, use statistics to monitor judicial behavior. Martin Luther King used to say, you can't legislate morality. You can't stop everybody by passing a law from being immoral or racist. But you can regulate behavior. You can monitor behavior and hold people accountable for their behavior. If a particular police officer always has a use of force and is always, using their power in black and brown neighborhoods, but they don't use them in the white neighborhoods, well, then we've got to look at that a little more carefully. If a judge is always given high sentences or locking people up because they're black or brown and they don't do the same thing with white people, well, we got to look at that. So let's use what we've learned about using technology to hold police and judges accountable. It can't be that we say all judges are bad or all cops are bad. It's got to be, let's weed out the bad apples. And one of the things I would say is we need to persuade the police that this thin blue line idea is over, because the bad apples are taking down the whole profession, and they should want to clean up the bad apples as much as anybody else so that people will start respecting the cops again, because you can't do community policing without having some trust for law enforcement. So the cops should have an incentive to go after the bad actors in their ranks.
I was watching the episode of I think The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell on MSNBC, and he was using he said the white teenage killer up in Buffalo, the cop with a gun in his hand, the police managed to talk to him
and get him to
disarm him, arrest him, and unarmed black people are being shot and killed. And he said it shows it can be done when they want to. You know what I'm saying? And he made that point, and we have to call that out in policing. I thought that's something that you don't hear on networks like MSNBC. You hear that in our communities, but you don't hear a white newscaster, someone like that, say that much often.
Well, it's a very real thing. And the way the deal is to call it out, number one. And number two, we got to do better training. Because, a lot of times a police officer is afraid themselves. And a lot of times people are afraid because they're ignorant of each other. And we have to do a better job of treating white police officers about black people and exposing them and talking to each other. I mean, one of the biggest problems in our society is that people just don't, the biggest comes from segregation, is black people and white people just don't hang out that much. One of the great things that I've got from politics is I've built a lot of friendships with all different types of people, not just black people, but white people, but, Indians and Pakistanis and Chinese and Koreans and Latinos and Jewish. And what I'm convinced of is we're all the same. We got different ways of talking or different food or different music or traditions or family customs, but everybody is 95, 99% the same. And we're all concerned about the same things. Who loves me? Who doesn't love me? What's right? What's wrong? How am I going to pay the bills to raise my kids? Pretty much basic stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What are your thoughts? Another topic I see a lot of people protesting and have covered a lot of stories. Qualified immunity. There's a push to end qualified immunity. What are
Never
your
going to
thoughts?
happen. It's never going to happen. In Washington, I dealt with this in Washington. We passed the George Floyd Policing Act bill through the House, died in the Senate, and the big issue is qualified immunity, and it's just never, even the senator, the Republican black senator from Tim Scott, where is he from? He's from South Carolina, I think.
South Carolina, I think?
Yeah. And it's we're just never going to get that, because if cops are afraid that their behavior is going to result in them getting sued, they're not going to be able to act. So there has to be, now cops, if they do something like in the George Floyd case, yeah, they got to be sued. They got to go to jail. So, but it's got to be like an egregious standard. It can't be that every time you do something, you're subject to getting arrested. Did you see that video of that little boy up in Syracuse that got arrested for stealing potato chips? Not arrested, picked up by the cops and put in the back of the car and brought home to his mother. Did you see that video or not?
I did not see it.
Okay, so there was a video.
I did not see it.
It was a video of a black boy, maybe, I don't know, 8 or 10 years old. And the cops showed up. He was stealing potato chips. And they were taking him to the police car. They're going to bring him home to his mother. And the boy's crying and he's screaming. And people in the community came out and said, what are you picking on this kid for? What are you arresting this kid for? They weren't arresting him, but what are you doing this to him for? You're ruining his life. What are you doing? Now, if you trust the cops, you say, well, you know what? It's good to scare the kid straight a little bit when he's young, bringing him home to his mother. Mother will tell him he can't be stealing potato chips. That's a good thing. If you don't trust the cops, you're like, what are you doing to this kid? Why are you picking on this kid? What are you doing to him? Well, he's crying. Look at him. He's so upset. What are you doing? This is this whole lack of trust and how you look at things. And we got to talk about it, and we got to figure out how to move forward, and we got to try and figure out how to build trust.
What I find most on both sides are judging the many by the few. And what I mean by that, there are a small set of the population in the black community that are doing all the bad things that you hear about and committing all the crimes and stuff, but they're always in the streets, so the cops see them all the time. And then sometimes look at me, the black man, like I've done something wrong. And they end up judging the many by the few. There are also a handful of cops that are the ones violating our rights, and you see beating up on kids and doing all those things, but those are the ones you see out all the time. Yeah. So eventually the community starts judging the many by the few, and that's, I think, a problem on both sides. And when there is no interaction, it only gets, and you read what happens in the media and you see social media, it only divides it even further.
Yeah, I've got a lot of colleagues, black colleagues in Congress, and I got friends of mine. I appointed the first black city councilman in the history of Glen Cove, and he ended up losing his first election. I wanted to appoint him again because there was an open spot. He wouldn't do it. He ended up running for office, and he became the highest vote getter in the history of Glen Cove. History of or not the history, but highest vote getter of all the city council people running that year. But I listen to the stories they tell me. I was driving with I won't say who it is, a member of Congress down in Washington. We were going to go see an ambassador. And yet it was a half hour away from Capitol Hill. We were going to an ambassador's house. We were going through a residential neighborhood. It's very dark, very few lights. He's got a nice car. It's like a classic car. And I said to him, when we're driving right now, are you worried that you could get pulled over, and how you would deal with the guy? He said, absolutely. Because he's driving through a nice neighborhood in a fancy car. He's a black man. And, we talked about how, because that was when a lot of talk was going on about the talk, when parents speak to their kids about, and I was trying to find out, is that with everybody, or is that, it's everybody. Everybody goes through that. Oh, everybody black, I mean. And
you have to have these conversations with your children, and you have to prepare them for that. Even if they living in a good neighborhood does not escape you from that experience, because a lot of times you get treated like, what are you doing here? You don't belong in this neighborhood. Or you might just be jogging home from the store or something, and what are you running from? And you know what I'm saying? So you might come across that. Even living in a good neighborhood does not escape you from that that frame of mind.
Yep. A friend of mine who talked about how he's a very successful black man, very successful medical professional. And he said, I've lived the American dream. I got a great job. I got a beautiful wife. I make a lot of money. I got a great car, got a nice house. He said, anytime somebody wants to, they can try and take me down by calling me, he said the N-word. And it was that was like 20 years ago he said that to me. And that really hit me over the head. And so it's very real. I mean, I get it. And I'm, one of the reasons I'm in public life for as long as I have been, off and on, is I want to make the world a better place to live in. And I want to try and address the problems that exist. And I got a heart for the people, but I've also got the skills to do the job. And so your previous person says, I'm not picking on Lee Zeldin. Let me win the Democratic primary first. I promise I'll pick on Lee Zeldin plenty. He's a big Trump supporter. So, and he can't beat me.
Absolutely.
He can't beat me.
And
because he can't beat me, because he can't beat me on Long Island. He can't beat me in Westchester. And I'm talking about crime and taxes. So he can't beat me. He can beat Kathy Hochul, but he can't beat me.
So out of the three, and then there's we interviewed Jumaane Williams a week or two ago. Why are you the candidate that all my viewers should vote for?
Let me just say about Jumaane Williams, I have tremendous respect for him. He's got an amazing personal story. He's going through a lot of stuff right now personally. Right now, it's in the newspapers. I'm not disclosing anything I'm not supposed to be, but he's going through a lot of stuff personally right now in the middle of a campaign. I have great respect for him, but I disagree with him on a lot of policy stuff. He's much too far to the left for me. I got the same goals he has, but I don't agree with the way of getting there. And the difference between me and him and Kathy Hochul, the difference with me is I'm a proven executive. I know how to run government. I've been a chief executive of a small city and a big county, and I've been in Congress. I know how to run government. I'm a CPA and an attorney. I'm a proven executive. I'm a common sense Democrat. I'm not going to pander to the left. I'm not going to back down to the right. I'll work with Democrats. I'll work with Republicans. I'll work with progressives. I'll work with moderates. I'll work with anybody if you really want to help the people. I won't change my values, but I'll work with anybody to get the job done. And I'm being very clear about my issues. I'm not obfuscating in any way. Crime, taxes, and troubled schools. And now corruption is a big issue too. But I endorsed Eric Adams very early on in his race for mayor. And he asked me to be his deputy mayor. And I said, I'm not going to be a deputy mayor. I'm running for governor. I can do more to help you as governor. I can do more to help the city and the state as governor than I can as your deputy mayor. And, I think that he wanted me to work with him because I supported him as much as I did early on, but he knows that I've got the experience of how to run things. So that's a big difference between me. I'm a proven executive, common sense Democrat, very clear about the issues.
Now, in the House and what's going on in the Senate, it seems like there is no working together with the Democrats and the Republicans on a lot of things. And that's starting to trickle down a lot to the local scene, state, county, and some of the municipalities.
Trump.
How, some people think it can't be done. Our president, when he was campaigning, told us that he would bring everybody together, and he's not been able to do that on that level. As governor, how will you be able to do that?
So in Congress, I'm the vice chairman of a group called the Problem Solvers Caucus. 29 Democrats, 29 Republicans. We meet every week to try and find common ground to solve problems. We passed a $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill. Roads, bridges, sewer, water, broadband, electric vehicle charging stations. A bill like that has evaded the past 4 presidents. We got it done. Even Mitch McConnell voted for it. That guy doesn't vote for anything, okay? It was bipartisan because we laid out a framework amongst this Problem Solvers Caucus and the equivalent group in the Senate, and we found bipartisan consensus. You got to build relationships with people. You got to build trust with people. You got to understand where they're coming from and try and everybody wants to focus out here on the edges, extreme left, extreme right. Most of the people are in the middle, and they say, why can't you just, work it out? Why can't you just help the people? So that's what I've been doing. And that, you think it was easy to be in that group like that in Washington, D.C. these days? No, not easy to do. It's very hard. But that's what it takes to get the people's business done. Because people are fed up. People are sick of politicians. They're sick of everybody just fighting with each other. And it's so obvious what the problems are.
Now, while that was a necessary bill, a lot of people were disappointed that the other part of it, the Build Back Better part, didn't come through. A lot of people are disappointed that the Voting Right Act, the John Lewis Voting Right Act, has the George Floyd. I mean, it went through the House, but this stuff doesn't. It dies in the Senate.
Went through the House, yeah.
Right. They die in the Senate.
I'm a strong supporter of all of those things, and I had major provisions in the Build Back Better bill that I was the lead person on, including restoring the state and local tax deduction, which is a big deal in Westchester and down where I live on Long Island. But quite frankly, my party and the other party, they go too far. They go too far to the extremes. And there's some things you just can't bridge the divide because they're so far out on the edges. When instead of trying to compromise and getting 3/4 of a loaf, everybody's got to get 100% my way or the highway. And that's what takes us all down. And then people campaign off of that and raise money off of that and say how terrible the other person is. And that's, it's a cycle over and over and over again. But let me just say this, Mr. Woodson. There are 435 seats in Congress. Of the 435 seats in Congress, 380 of them are safe seats. You can't lose because they're gerrymandered. They pack all the Republicans over here. They pack all the Democrats over there. And if you're the Republican in the Republican seat, you're the Democrat in the Democratic seat, you can't lose. How can it be that Congress has a 15% approval rating, but 90% get reelected? Okay, it's broken. So what happens? The only way you can lose in those seats is by losing a primary. And nobody votes in the primaries. The far right votes in the Republican primary. The far left votes in the Democratic primary. So all these politicians pander to their base. And they just try and keep their base happy instead of talking about what the people care about. Then you take social media. Who are the most popular people on social media? The people that say the most extreme things on the right, people that say the most extreme things on the left. That causes more polarization. Then cable news. The most popular show on cable news, 4 million viewers out of 330 million Americans, is Tucker Carlson. And on the left, it's Rachel Maddow. Extremes. So all these things, the members of Congress, social media, cable news, are all pulling us apart from each other. And the thing we have to be most worried about that nobody talks about are the Russians and the Chinese are using social media to take the most extreme messages we have and pump them up and get us all pissed off at each other. And they're trying to sow civil unrest because they want to pull us apart and show democracy can't work. So we have to fight back against that. So
now, one of the other things leading the headlines these days is the Supreme Court possibly overturning Roe v. Wade, and I guess the states putting the power more into the states and the fight to protect us in New York, the right to abortion. Where do you stand on all of that?
There's no daylight between me and the governor on that issue. I agree with her on that issue. Abortion has to remain safe, legal, and accessible. We have more protections than most states do. Passed a few years ago, but we got to keep on being a national model. I'd like us to also be a national model to prevent unintended pregnancies too, and try and promote education and contraception, so that people don't end up in the situation. Women don't end up in the situation, or man and a woman don't end up in a situation where they're facing an unintended pregnancy. The only way that's going to happen is we educate people better and we provide contraception.
Okay. Is there anything so far? I like to throw a lot of questions, but is there anything I haven't asked you that you want everybody to know about you, your candidacy, what you would do as governor, anything that I haven't covered so far?
Well, I want to make it clear that I'm a Democrat for a long time, lifelong Democrat. I was the Environmentalist of the Year by the League of Conservation Voters. I was the Immigration Coalition's Person of the Year for the work I did to help immigrants. I have a F rating from the NRA. Kathy Hochul had an A rating from the NRA when she was in Congress. But I have an F rating from the NRA. I'm the chairman of the Labor Caucus in Congress because I believe in everybody should have a decent wage and benefits. So I'm the chair and founder of the Labor Caucus. I've got a 100% rating from the Human Rights Campaign, a 100% rating from Planned Parenthood, and every other thing you can think of. The Democrats they talk about. I got good grades. I'm concerned about my party, and I'd like to say about one thing I did that I'm proud of, especially considering this is Black Westchester Radio. I got a congressional gold medal for the Harlem Hellfighters. The Harlem Hellfighters were black soldiers in World War I that the white soldiers wouldn't fight with them. And when they went to Europe, they put them with the French, and the French gave them their weapons and their helmets. They went on to become the most active regiment in all of World War I. Yet when they came home, they were confronted with racism. And a guy from my hometown of Glen Cove, turns out there were 34 Harlem Hellfighters from Glen Cove. One family had 5 brothers. But a guy from Glen Cove, his family came to me and said, our father and grandfather, he died in the 50s, was shot during World War II, and he was attacked with mustard gas. It affected his breathing for the rest of his life. He never got a Purple Heart. So I arranged to get him a Purple Heart. First it was denied, and then I ended up getting him a Purple Heart. But in the process, I learned about this whole regiment of black soldiers that were one of the most storied regiments in all of World War I. And I got it bipartisan. I worked with the Congress member from Harlem and with the chairwoman of the Congressional Black Caucus, a woman named Joyce Beatty. And I got over 300 members of Congress, Democrats and Republicans, to co-sponsor it. I got it passed in the Senate. I got it signed by the president. Actually went to the White House to get it signed. And I believe that the Harlem Hellfighters are going to be as well known as the Tuskegee Airmen over the next 10 years because we're bringing attention to their heroic efforts during World War I. And so one other thing I want to talk about that you said I could talk about stuff I didn't get to talk about. I would tell you one more thing. My father was born in Italy, came to the United States as a young boy. lived a great American success story. Went to a great law school. But because he was an Italian, fought in World War II, got the Distinguished Flying Cross, navigator on B-24. But because he was Italian, he couldn't get a job at a law firm. Because everybody thought the Italians, because the Italians had teamed up with the Germans during World War II, they thought the Italians were either fascist like Mussolini or that they were the mafia. So people can't believe it. But in the 40s, the Italians, and the 50s, and even 60s, Italians were very discriminated against. And my father was the best man I ever knew. He was very involved in the 60s, campaigned for John F. Kennedy, involved in the civil rights movement. And if anybody ever said anything discriminatory about anybody else in his presence, he'd either confront the person or he'd walk out of the room. And so, my whole life, I've always tried to live up to the example of my parents and grandparents. 3 of them were immigrants, all lived through the Depression. Father fought in World War II. Like I said, my mom and dad involved in the 60s. And I always thought to myself, what am I going to do to live up to their example? I try to do it as mayor, as county executive, as member of Congress. But I feel like right now, everything I've done in my life has prepared me for this particular job at this particular time to try and make a difference and to help people. And this is a moment that I've been preparing for. And I need the people on your show who are sick and tired of the politics. They know people that have left New York State. Everybody listening to your show knows somebody who moved to Florida, moved to North Carolina, moved to South Carolina, moved to Texas or Georgia or Arizona. Everybody's moving away. And if they're fed up with it and they hear me and they say, boy, this guy Tom Suozzi seems like he makes some sense, I need you to tell your friends and tell your neighbors and your relatives and help get people to vote for me in this tough election so we can take the state back for the people again. And if they hear me and they don't like what I'm saying, then just keep it to yourself. Don't say anything.
Now you mentioned your father coming from Italy.
Yeah.
So one of the things I'm seeing a lot of talk about, a pathway to citizenship. That's the issue. And 2, I'm seeing there's been a lot of discussion lately. It's not popular. We have immigrants that are here that may not be citizens, but they work and they pay taxes. And I had a very unpopular conversation with several people, white, black, regardless, about I believe that they should be able to vote in the local elections. This country, the one thing they browbeat me in my head when I was a child in elementary school is this country was founded on no more taxation without representation. So if you're going to take that, I'm not saying they should vote in presidential elections, but I think they should be allowed to vote in local elections if they pay taxes. That's not a popular view.
No. I'm not with you on that one. Now, listen, I do believe, when I was the mayor of Glen Cove, 1994, I worked on this issue. I set the first day worker shape-up center anywhere in the East Coast of the United States of America. Had all the guys in the street corners, put them in one location. If they got hired and didn't get paid, somebody would advocate to make sure they get paid. If they didn't get hired, they could learn to stay and speak English and learn a job skill. Those same guys have their own businesses, they have their own homes, and their kids went to school with my kids. So I've been looking at this issue a long time. And I tried to make a deal with a pretty conservative Republican. And we came up with a compromise. It's actually an op-ed piece we wrote in the New York Times. And the New York Times gave the headline, The Grand Compromise. But it didn't happen because it was right in the middle of a bunch of Trump crazy stuff. And that's all anybody was focused on. But my idea was, let's give a pathway to citizenship for the dreamers, the kids that were brought here when they're little kids and they've graduated from high school and they're either in college or they got a full-time job or they're in the military. Let's give a pathway to citizenship for the TPS recipients, temporary protective status, Those are the people that were like in their country were in war or a hurricane or something like that. And we invited them here, 25 years ago. So that's like 2 million people or so. Then I said, let's give 3 million other people some sort of legalization so that they don't have to be looking over their shoulder every day. They've been here 15 or 20 years. They got to learn to speak English. They never committed any crimes or anything. They can't become a citizen, can't vote, but they can stop looking over their shoulder, can make sure they pay taxes, get a driver's license, that kind of stuff. 5 million people. I said, those 5, and I got a conservative Republican to agree with me. Let's get those 5 million people. They got to pay a $2,000 fee. 5 million times $2,000 is $10 billion. I said, let's give half the money to the Republicans so they can secure the border. They want to put a wall up, whatever they want to do. You do whatever the Republicans want to do with the money, you go do that. Then give $5 billion to the Democrats, and we'll try and help Guatemala and Honduras and El Salvador to stop the people from coming in the first place. And we'll set up an Ellis Island for the southern border so that people can go through a process instead of this, crossing the river stuff that's so absurd. And, but right now, the facilities on the southern border, like, you can only process like 40 or 50 people a day, where there's thousands of people. So have them go into a facility where they get their health is checked. You go through a judicial process to see if they're allowed to come or not. If they're not allowed to come, they go back. They're allowed to come, let them come. But you go through the process. Not all this cross the river and send them off in a bus. So it's a reasonable compromise. Why is it we can't get this stuff done for 30 years? We can't fix the gun issue for 30 years. We can't deal with climate change for 30 years. We can't fix healthcare and prescription drugs for 30 years. We can't increase black and brown home ownership for 30 years. I mean, why can't we do the basic stuff? Because the people that benefit from the status quo want to keep things the way they are. They don't want it to change. And they're going to try and beat down the people that try and change it. I'm trying to change things. And I'm going to get, there's a lot of people with a lot of money trying to beat me down. How did the governor raise so much money? She raised more money than Cuomo ever did for her campaign. She raised more money than Spitzer ever did, or Patterson, or Pataki. How did she raise so much money in such a short period of time? Because people say, oh, I'm so inspired by the Buffalo Bills. I'm so inspired by the Brian Benjamin. I'm so inspired that you won't do anything about crime. I'm so inspired that your budget stinks. Who's giving all this money? The people who do business with the state. People who are looking for a cannabis license, people who have a nursing home, people who are the big developers, the lobbyists. Every lobbyist was told they had to raise $250,000 for her campaign. It's broken. It's a broken system. It's an insider game. How can it be that the last 3 governors had to leave in scandal? Eric Schneiderman left in scandal. Alan Hevesy, scandal. Dean Skelos, Shelley Silver, Joe Bruno. Now just Brian Benjamin, 8 months in office, arrested for corruption and bribery. How many dozens of other state assembly members and state senators have been arrested? It's broken. Nobody's accountable. Let's turn it around. Let's take it back for the people. Let's focus on the things that people care about. That's what I'm running for. That's why I'm doing your show, so I can speak directly to the people instead of, the newspapers are hardly covering the race. There's going to be a debate. Giuliani and I agreed to all the debates. Giuliani and I are going to be debating just each other for a couple debates. Hochul's only agreed to 2 debates. But let's have a debate, and let's pay attention, and let's take back our state for the people. And let's focus on the issues the people care about.
Okay, last question I want to get you. We were talking about education. I want to go back to that. There is a big push for a new deal for CUNY. We're talking about a lot of people can't afford to go. And they were like, there's a push for CUNY and even SUNY that should be free for all for 2 years. Where do you stand on that?
2 years, 2 years, community colleges, I buy that 100%.
Because it's cheaper to pay for them to go to a community college than to house somebody for that same year and incarcerate somebody. It costs a whole lot more than that, and we incarcerate people.
$400,000.
Right.
$400,000 to incarcerate. So this is my biggest issue. I should have spoken about it before, okay? We got to help these kids in young ages at schools.
Mm-hmm.
We got to take all of our there's no more money, okay? We've got the highest taxes in America, highest state and local taxes in America already. Everybody says it's better to educate a child instead of paying for a jail cell. How come it doesn't happen? Bishop Desmond Tutu used to say, we spent a lifetime pulling people out of the river. Let's go upstream and stop them from falling in the river in the first place. We got to take all of our health and human services, federally funded, state funded, locally funded, non-for-profits, tens of billions of dollars in New York. Social services, health, mental health, veterans, seniors, youth, physically challenged, drug and alcohol programs. Take all that stuff and bring it into our schools at a young age so that when a kid has a problem at a young age and the teachers just can't deal with all the volume of problems that exist in troubled school districts, get that kid a social worker and find out what existing programs do we have that we can access to actually help that kid. And because the kid has to be at school, it's a captive audience, you can get to the parents as well and find out what's going on at home. But solve those little problems when kids are young before they become big problems later on in life. Because all the dysfunction of society, crime, poverty, homelessness, domestic violence, all related to drugs and alcohol, all come from stuff that happens when kids are young. We got to address those problems even before kindergarten, but from kindergarten to 8th grade and into high school. And recognize not everybody's going to college. 66% of Americans do not graduate from college. Give them a path to success, an opportunity where they can actually, they say, don't join a gang, don't join a gang. Give them something to do. Give them a job. Give them a skill. So it's all very doable. I'm saying the same thing I said before. I got the heart to do this, but I got the skills to do it as well, to run things, to make government work for the people.
For those who want to find out more about you, website, social media, how do people get in touch with you?
I'm on every platform, Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that. But it's Suozzi for NY. Suozzi is spelled Suozzi. Now you couldn't say my name before. Remember?
I can spell it though.
You can spell it.
I can spell it. I know how to spell it. Suozzi. See, I got it.
Suozzi, Suozzi. I can't even. I'm losing my voice. Suozzi, a Democratic guy. I elect them. Anyway, Suozzi for NY. That's my website. All my different. Got a 15-point crime intervention and prevention plan. I have a 6-point government accountability plan. I got a tax reduction plan. I got a plan to help the kids in troubled schools. I got it's laid out on my website, Suozzi for NY.
I just muted myself. Had an ice cream truck go by. I didn't want y'all. Yeah. So I want to thank you for coming on the show. If and when you win and become the next governor, I hope that you utilize smaller platforms like this to continue to get the word out to the people. Because one of the reason we did this, and once whether it get a lot of people live, once we post it on the website and we share it, a lot of people see it. But the information does not trickle down to certain communities. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't care how many, everybody's not watching MSNBC, everybody's not watching CNN, everybody's not even watching News 12 in the weekly news or read Newsday. So some of the smaller shows and platforms like us are reaching people that there's so many people that are not being reached. And I thank you for taking the time.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity.
Hopefully we will get the governor on next. We have not gotten a word from the governor yet, but Jemani came
hold
on.
your breath.
Yeah, well, I reached out to everybody. Those who come, those who don't. But thank you for your time. This will be on Black Westchester tonight, tomorrow, and I'll send it to your camp, and you can share it too if you want. So,
thanks, man.
Good luck.
Thanks, buddy. I'll talk to you soon. AJ. Appreciate
All right,
you.
bye-bye.
Appreciate you.
Yes. And that is our governor candidate, Tom Suozzi, running for governor. Currently, Long Island congressman right now. This is second of two of the three candidates running in the Democratic primary for New York State Governor. You've seen Jumaane Williams. Now you've seen Congressman Tom Suozzi. And with any luck, hopefully we'll have the governor on actually and let her make her case to the people. We do this on our Super Tuesdays edition to hopefully allow you to make more informed decisions at the ballot box. This is Black Westchester special edition, Super Tuesday edition, where we interview the candidates before the election. Until next time, peace.